I wonder where this started. Like, where did this passion begin? And I immediately called up Mark, our common friend, and I asked him, I said, so what, did you see this? Like, when I saw what Ben's doing now and how, he said, oh yeah, when we were, so he shared a story with me that when you guys were in third grade, that you watch horror movies.
Yeah.
Like in third grade in your house. And Mark said that he would pee his pants and that you loved them. And that you would like just be so entranced into that world.
It's crazy to think back on just from like a parenting standpoint, because my parents are fantastic and responsible, but for whatever reason they let me watch these crazy horror movies from the time I was like 6, you know? And I think I'm fairly well adjusted instead of being psychotic, but you know, there was like a video store.
Or it's closeted. Maybe
Exactly.
It's closeted and you just don't want to share it with anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there was a video store like next to the toy store that we used to go to down the street. And this was back when, obviously it's not that long ago, but now it feels so far in the past, where there were literally like the VHS covers that were on the walls, and you would pick one and there'd be one copy of each tape. And if someone else in the town wanted to watch the movie, you had to wait for them to return it to see it. And I don't know why at first, maybe it was the covers of the tapes or whatnot, but something about horror movies I just was intrigued by. My mom let me watch it once and I kind of got hooked. And I remember...
Do you remember what your first horror movie was or no?
I think strangely, I don't know if this is right, but the first one I sort of remember is The Blob, like the remake of The Blob, which is like, if you watch it...
The Blob? Like B-L-O-B?
It is a terrible movie, but it's just like a guy in like a gelatinous globe that would attack people, and it was really not a good movie. That it was on TV the other day. I started watching it because I remembered it from my childhood, and I was like, I can't believe this is what got me so excited about these. But
I was gonna say, was it the same when you saw it again or no?
No, it never holds up. Right? I think my mom also sort of liked those movies. We watched like Night of the Living Dead together and some others. I think I just always loved Halloween, so like going out and dressing up with friends and getting candy and then coming back and watching, staying up late than I would ever be allowed to stay up and watching those horror movie marathons. I think that's sort of where, I built a passion there. I watched a lot of, it wasn't just horror movies. I watched, all sorts, but I remember in like 4th or 5th grade, there was a new student who was Turkish, I believe, and whose parents were immigrants, and they didn't really know exactly what to do when they had a birthday party, because they were going to do like a slumber party, and asked my mom for a movie recommendation, and I think she recommended like Return of the Living Dead, and we played it, and everyone like totally freaked out.
Oh, that's great.
That parent was to my mom like, "Why did you choose that movie?" That was normal, like, no problem. But yeah, I always loved movies, in high school. I don't know if this is jumping ahead, but we had like the thing called senior options.
Oh, right. Yeah.
People did like glass blowing or worked at the police station. It's sort of like, for a month or 2, you had to do something outside of school for school credit. And a friend of mine, we did like a movie review website and did sort of a focus on, I think we had to put together like a terrible fake episode of a show doing movie reviews. So it was always something I cared about.
Wait, hold on. So you created, was it a website that you created, or what was this?
We did a website which definitely doesn't exist. It was on some like server provided by the high school, but it was like a movie review website. Somehow it basically was like the greatest con of all time. We got to watch movies and write about them as, school credit.
That's genius.
Yeah, it was pretty creative to not actually have to do any work.
So you created, who was it with, by the way?
Matt Zambetti.
Matt,
as we call him.
White.
Yeah.
Are you still in contact, by the way, with a lot of your buddies from Scarsdale?
Everybody, pretty much. Because I think like with WhatsApp and every email, it's just become so easy to stay in touch.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Probably our parents struggled.
So I'm envisioning you and White sitting on your asses watching movies and then just taking notes and saying what is like, did you study, what did you learn, did you take something from that experience or how?
My advisor was this guy Bill Pankow, who was a film editor who had worked on that movie like Mr. 3000, I'm sure a million others that I'm forgetting, but that was cool because he gave some insight into like the filmmaking process, because you don't really understand what editing and post is,
Right.
post-production process. And he just sort of introduced us to some movies that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise watched, like The Bicycle Thief, and some sort of, some foreign films, some movies that weren't necessarily completely on our radar, which is great. But other than that, yeah, there was no like academic process or anything. It was literally, hey, this movie looks cool, let's watch it, and then we'll write up a review on the site and give it. I forget. I don't even remember what I think it was numbered. No, I think it was grades. I forget what our metric was.
Did you? Because you have to give a presentation, right? At the end.
Presentation went horribly. Because it was one of those things, like you could sort of fake it long enough that you're doing real work until the actual presentation, when everyone sees like what's going on behind the curtain and the fact that you've just been watching movies. We just had a website. We showed this teacher the website, and he's like, this doesn't look like a ton of work. So why don't you guys put together like a fake episode as if you were doing a TV show? So we cut together basically like Ebert and Roper. I don't know if you ever watched that.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, where we were going back and forth, and we did a list of like the top 5 movies of the year and all that good stuff. And it was terrible. But
what did you do in 7th grade? There were speech class. Did you do anything related to movies or no?
No, I never did.
Because I think it was, you had to show something, right? Wasn't it like a talent, or what was that?
Yeah, you had to present on there was like a bunch of different things. You had to present on something you could do well. You had to.
Oh my God! You can choose comedy.
Yeah, you could choose anything. I think I chose it. This is also. I think I also had this video, and this was like a total disaster. I remember I was like peer pressured by some good friends to like mess around and pretend that I knew how to rap. So I did like how to rap. And it was like, I literally did like a Dr. Seuss rhyme out of rhythm, and the teacher told me after to be like, that was embarrassing. And
no, the teacher said it.
He's like, I should have made you show me how that you could do it. It was one of those, again, it was, I guess, the pattern of like getting away with something, and then the moment comes that you have to actually present and it doesn't go well. But yeah, it was memorable, I think, but not very good.
I was reflecting with my brother, and we were flabbergasted that so I came from Colombia when I was about 8-9 years old to Quaker Ridge. So I was like in 4th grade, and my older brother Andres came in middle school. By the way, you know how hard middle school is, right? Or I don't know, maybe was it just for me? Middle school was like a freaking jungle, man. It was like
it's like everyone's in it together, right? But I don't think anyone really enjoys it.
Oh my God, it was horrific. I was going with my brother, and it's funny actually. Now that I reflect back with a couple buddies from Scarsdale, now that you're older, but it's like a time where you are intelligent enough to be extremely mean, but you have no clue of how of how deep that act can actually be, right? So I remember talking about speech class. My brother came to middle school in 7th grade, and don't ask me why he chose this. Keep in mind, we didn't even speak English properly. He chose comedy as like his topic, and he did literally like the skit resembled like a Seinfeld type of comedy, right? Like, what is it? What is it up with when you're in a movie and blah blah blah, and I was cracking up with my brother because I'm like, how did you? Like, I'm remembering that time, and I just remember how crazy it is. Yeah. I'm like, and top of that, you chose comedy. You just got there. You're like you just came into the school. Yeah, you were cracking up. He's like, I have no. It's like ignorance is bliss, man. Like,
yeah.
When you don't know anything and you're trying to learn like the culture, you just,
Hey, it's brave.
it's brave. It's super brave. Did you ever have because I think everyone took general studies or music, orchestra or whatever. Do you remember? Did you ever have that professor, that teacher that had this afro?
Is it Mr. Bohm?
Is it Mr. Bro? And he had a
Yeah.
like a burnt mark.
Yeah.
Did you do? Did you enjoy those classes? Was that actually, now that I think about it, because they showed what did they? Oh, they also, no, they showed opera and they showed a lot of.
I remember they showed Amadeus, which is like one of the best
Right.
movies of all time.
Right.
Also like a 3-hour movie, so it was that thing where each class is what, 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Right. So you had like three
Like
classes.
half the semester. But I remember loving that, and then I think after we watched like Marriage of Figaro or something as put on by the Met, and that was a little less exciting. But, yeah, I remember that class.
Did he ever do the joke on you guys? Because he did it all the time with us, which was every time a siren or a cop, a siren like ambulance or a cop car passed by, he would stop whatever he's doing and say, "Oh, they found me." Did he ever do that with you guys?
I feel like I've heard that joke from many people over the years.
Oh, have you? I remember in class every time, like he literally be passionate about talking something, and like a child, when the sirens would pass by, he would say it. And by the way, he did that joke every time sirens pass by.
Kept going back to the well.
So like by the 20th time, it was funny again, because you're just like, this guy's not stopping. Like he's banking on this.
Yeah.
All right, so you did senior options, movie review. Then you graduated, you went to Stanford.
Yep.
And in Stanford, you studied film and also, what was it, creative writing?
Yeah, English with a focus in creative writing. Yeah, Stanford's obviously a great school and a great place, and you go there and it's like, I want to do computer science and I want to do earth studies and all these things that they're known for, right? But I guess I wasn't that good at them or something. I don't know. And they just had started this film studies program. My graduating class was the first graduating year for that program. And it was much more of a focus on film theory, film analysis, than film production. You know, NYU, USC, other schools like that have a real kind of hands-on approach where
Right.
you study film, but you also are hands-on making films as far as having equipment to rent and senior thesis and all of that. This was much more reading about different film theory, reading about, the history of cinema. And obviously, as someone who's always enjoyed that was pretty easy major. Not obviously, it's less challenging than computer science, but
what was every class? So was the class you watch a movie and then you break it down afterwards, or what did that involve?
Usually, it depends. There were different sort of focuses. So like an English major, we'll have a class where it's Russian lit, right? And then there's modern American literature. Like it would be broken down in that respect.
Okay.
And usually there'd be a text, right? So there'd be a specific film theory that you would read, and then you would watch a movie. There'd usually be a screening once or twice a week in the auditorium where you'd watch a film, and then the class would be discussing the film sort of through the lens of that specific film theory or in the context of whatever historical moment you're considering.
That's really cool.
And then you write a paper on it, right? So you write kind of your interpretation of the film through thinking about it in context of whatever the philosophy that we've been reading about. You
graduated Stanford and it was Kinetic, or what happened after Stanford?
I lived in San Francisco for 2 years, and I started off, I did the sort of soulless decision, not soulless, I don't know what to say it, but I guess not very creative decision of interviewing at Google, which is what everyone,
You're following, well, I mean, Stanford, come on, I was
just doing what is expected of one, and
right.
I did that whole process. Did that day of 7 interviews back to back to back, whatever, and didn't get the job, which in hindsight was fortunate, but
It's destiny.
I kind of didn't know what, didn't have a job there. Loved Bay Area, had a lot of friends out of college who were living there, so that's what I wanted to do. I started doing some freelance writing because I've always been, into writing, and that doesn't pay very well.
Did you grow out your hair at this time in this phase? Because that's what I'm picturing right
Yeah.
now. I'm picturing you like long hair, your beard is just, you can't tame it.
I've always had trouble growing a good beard, so if I did, it was like patchy and gross. And my hair also, unfortunately, gets like a mullet sort of form if it gets very long. So
That was good.
to avoid that, I can't do like the flowing,
Yeah. Well, that's what I picture.
Yeah,
That's what I picture.
good to have a visual in mind.
So
yeah,
you were okay. Go on. Sorry.
I did some freelance writing, but that pays literally like, $75, $100 in assignments, and I wasn't like prolific by any means. So
was that through Upwork? Upwork wasn't even around, or what those like freelance networks?
It was more,
what were you doing back there? Was it like picking up a phone?
it was like Craigslist, It's like
Craigslist.
Seeing, who's looking for someone to do some copy editing or whatever, and you reach out, and it's like, oh,
that's not as crazy though in Craigslist as if you're looking to sell something that you think you're going to meet like a mass murderer. Like yours is at least, I mean, what bad can happen, right? Like if you're a psycho, you might just write something really bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's not as creepy.
It wasn't dangerous. But I did that a little bit, but I had to obviously get a job to pay my rent, and actually had a friend from Scarsdale who worked at a company that was a litigation support services company, which basically, I don't think a lot of people hear that and know what that means. It's not super exciting, but basically it'd be going to various lawyers, paralegals, legal secretaries, and selling these services, which is basically during a trial and a point of discovery when each side shares certain documents for the case, they have to be organized.
Wow.
So
Okay.
copied, they have to be put in a specific order, they have to be labeled, all that. So I got a job there, really through the help of my friend, and did that for like a year and a half of first working in the back room of like project management to make sure everything was going well, and then transitioning about halfway through into actual sales, which was a great learning experience. I'm a horrendous salesperson. Enjoyed doing that. It was a lot of walking around from law firm to law firm in San Francisco, which again is a pretty nice.
And so you were pitching. You would go to law firms and you would pitch to them that you were the best at organizing. And
it sounds ridiculous. It's like we can photocopy better than anybody,
than any other person around here.
There's a lot of like, I mean, it was great. Like my friend who was there was great at it, because there's a level of just like, you need to connect with the person at the front desk and make them like you. And so he would always bring like fresh baked warm cookies to try to foster goodwill. So to have it around. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's sort of the selling point was either your prices were lower, which ours weren't, because it's tough to have a good growing business with undercutting everyone's prices. That you were nice and fun to deal with, and that you basically didn't screw up a fairly, I don't want to demean the business and say simple task, but like at times a simple task. It could get quite complicated when it was like digital discovery and having to go into people's, organizing the more sort of like.
So it was 100% service. It was, we'll organize it and we'll bring you fresh cookies. Correct. Every day.
Yep.
Warm, fresh cookies.
Warm, has to be warm. Very important. Yeah, that was it. So I did that for a bit. And that company has actually grown tremendously. They're like doing great, and would have been.
That's awesome.
But it's sort of a certain point you stop and think, what am I actually passionate about? What do I want to do with my life? And if it's
that was a year and a half.
Year and a half was around when I left San Francisco. So I think I don't know exactly. I think I probably had that job for like a year.
Got it.
And then I'd spent some summers interning in LA in the film industry and enjoyed it. But as a New Yorker, there's always that like, feeling that you get taught your whole life that LA is terrible. So I decided to move back to New York. And
even though you liked LA, or no, or you
liked LA.
You experienced it still with the New York lens, so it wasn't as fun.
Exactly. When I was in LA, I had a blast, but I don't know. It felt like for whatever reason, go back to New York, be near family because my family's still there. Be near friends, both from college and high school, who were largely there. And when I was there, was looking at what to do. And my dad and grandfather have been in real estate, so I was talking about maybe getting involved in going that direction. And I started interviewing at a bunch of places, and I actually got a job as like a project manager for a real estate company, like actually construction company and that was sort of, I was thinking, okay, do a year or two doing that, learn about that, and then probably join the family business. And I was like a week or two away from starting that job, and I just had that sort of gnawing feeling of like, am I going to actually enjoy doing this? And around that time, very serendipitously, another friend, there's a pattern here, who worked at Cinetic, let me know that there was a job open there. So I went and interviewed for it. And it was
from school or a friend from where?
From school.
Stanford.
From
From Scarsdale.
Yeah. And I interviewed, and I guess this is a lesson. I sort of went very, I don't want to say casual because I was focused, but I had sort of nothing to lose because I had this other job and just sort of went for it and wound up getting it right away and decided, you know what, this is actually where my passion lies. Let me, head in this direction. So started there and worked there for a couple of years. And I guess
that was the selling of international rights. Is that how it began or no?
I started off on someone's desk as an assistant who was like the head of the financing and consulting division at the company. And a couple months in, he left to work for a film financier and media company. So I was sort of left there without a boss. And then I got a new boss who was the head of international sales. So she was, it was a brand new division at the company. Those divisions usually have a number of employees, but because this was nascent stages and seeing how it was going, it was really just the two of us, which was a great learning experience of just kind of being thrown into the water and sink or swim, figure it out. And then, so we did that for a bit. And then I want to say a year into that, she left to be the head of international in another company. So I was the only one there. I don't know if it's me, but I had multiple bosses leaving. And I was the only one in that division, besides the partners of the company who that wasn't really their background. They were smart guys who knew what they were doing, but didn't have the time to focus every minute of every day on that. So I became the de facto head of international, going to the film markets, building those relationships. And that was super exciting. I mean, I think could have been a career path for me. Was really fun, really illuminating, sort of shows you how a film is made in a way that people don't understand.
What was your conception of what a producer was before you became a producer?
I mean, I'd spent a little bit of time on sets, like super indie sets, so had some vague understanding, but I don't know. I always thought the pinnacle was kind of like finding a script, developing it, and then it kind of just gets made,
Somebody does it in the back room.
I guess it's just you don't really think about how it all comes together, and then when you're part of it, you realize how many people with very specific skills and talents go into it, and the entire process. And there are people who are coming up with more sort of macro concepts of what the film's going to look like, everything from the lighting and how it's shot to the props, those items. It's stuff that you never really think about unless you're in it, which sounds naive now, but for people who don't work in the film industry, it's like and it's obvious, but whenever you look you're watching a film and you look in the frame and there's a desk and there are all sorts of items on it, someone made the decision along with the director, like, this is what's going to be on that desk because it represents this about that character or this world, and the pencil should be this color, and each of these things are meticulously considered and applied in each day of filming. And the producer's role is interesting because a lot of the heavy lifting goes into setting everything up. So developing a script, building a good relationship with the director, being as helpful as possible in the relationship between the writer and the director, and obviously play a big role in casting the movie and putting together the crew. But once you get to the starting line of actually filming, you're kind of sitting around and waiting for either something to go wrong or a moment that you need to step in to help your director, because it's against relationships. So some directors want you to be at the monitor, looking, being their second set of eyes, saying, okay, I know we had these conversations about what matters to you in this scene. You're sort of missing the thing that you've said you really want.
Do you remember the first time as a producer that you were just put in the hotbed and it was a lot bigger or different than what you had gone through before?
I mean, we shot a movie called Gold with Matthew McConaughey, that's Steve Gaghan.
Great movie, yeah.
Thank you. And we couldn't, the movie is based on a true story set in Indonesia, but we couldn't shoot there because of censorship and just infrastructure. So we decided to shoot the jungles of Thailand just to be our version of Indonesia. And we found this incredible river and this incredible jungle, and it was this big epic kind of like Apocalypse Now vision. Obviously that's notoriously terrible, but I think that just happens anytime you go into these elements. And sure enough, our second day of filming, we had this incredible set with all these mining tents that our production design team had done such a brilliant job creating. And we noticed, it was raining a little bit, which was actually good because in the script there was a lot of rain, and that's something you deal with in monsoon season in the jungle. And someone noticed that the river was like starting to rise a little bit. That was right next to our set, and someone put in a stick at a certain level to sort of mark off where it was. And at the end of the day, we come back and the stick can't be seen anymore because it's not supposed to rain that much overnight. It'll be okay. Next day, we show up at set, and sure enough, the river has risen literally 25 feet, and all we can see of our set is like the very, very top of these tents, like this tarp. And we were literally going out in these canoes on water that's over everything that everyone built for 6 or 7 weeks. So that's sort of insane.
Was there actual equipment for filming and all that there? I mean,
once we realized what was happening, we got most of it out. There was like a couple of pieces of machinery that were it was because the ground got so wet and muddy, we couldn't get them out. But otherwise, the real loss was the set. Because
what did you end up doing then? What was the next step when you saw it?
I think we took 2 days off to gather ourselves and come up with a good plan, which was to sort of move up everything we could shoot. We found a different location, obviously. This was like a once in every 25 years level flood. And because of where our set was positioned, and it was downhill alongside this river, basically, even though it didn't rain so terribly right where we were, the rain further away caused the river to rise and rush down and wipe out our set. I mean, the sadder part was that there were like local people whose houses were ruined and stranded.
Oh, wow.
Sort of like emergency, which you lose sight of when you're dealing with,
with your set. Yeah.
But we moved up as much as we could in the schedule that could be shot creatively, in the elements. We found a different part of the jungle to go to in a different part of Thailand. And then we basically got our production design team working on creating a similar set in another location that turned out to be beautiful, that had enough elements from the previous set that we didn't have to throw away all that we shot in those couple of days.
Still within Thailand?
Yeah. And so when people watch the movie, they have no idea that you're actually seeing two different locations. But you know, it wound up, things were a little bit more rushed at times than we would have liked in terms of preparation. But it's what you have to do. You have to be flexible. You have to figure out a way to make up the time to stay on schedule.
How's your day look like? And I'm sure that is different in many different ways, but where do you allocate a lot of your time to? And
I think our philosophy has always been focused on our projects first. There are a lot of people who spend a lot of time doing meetings and just trying to sort of create, you know, opportunities by meeting people and sitting down with other producers, agents, writers, because it's such a relationship-driven business, which is something you have to do and should do and is super helpful. But we've always wanted to focus on actually making the movies that we have on our slate. So we, first and foremost, every day are just sort of thinking about those tasks related to those projects, whether it be working on a script that's not quite there and getting notes back to the writer, figuring out best ways to take a script that doesn't have a director and position it properly with the agencies and try to get a director on board. You know, if we have a director, figure out how we're going to get to cast best. If we have cast, you know, where we are in terms of the production plan and making sure we have the right locations, the right budget, the right schedule, and build the crew and really move towards actually getting that going. And then, you know, obviously if we're in production, if I'm the one who's on set for it, that's, you know, that's pretty much your 98% of your focus. You really don't, it's your responsibility to the people involved in that project. And also just from a time allocation standpoint, you really have to focus on every day being there for that. And then when we have something in post, we give our director as much distance as he or she would like until they're ready to show something. And then when we reach that phase, for some indeterminate period of time, hopefully as little as possible, we're in the edit room with them, just trying to kind of help get it all the way there to the best version of the film. And if it's none of those scenarios, which happens time, you know,
yeah,
it's reading scripts, it's reading books, it's reading articles, it's coming up with development ideas, it's doing that outreach to try to find out what that next great project that's going to hit the market. So, and all those things often are kind of blended into the same day. There's not like necessarily a hierarchy of, okay, this is my focus for the day. You're doing all those things kind of at the same time, sometimes with the exception of if you're either in the edit room or on set. But yeah, I think it's nice. It's a job where each day brings something different in a very genuine way.
If you're speaking with a young person who wants to be a producer, and let's say someone that just is heading towards college, wants to be a producer, what's some advice you can share?
I'm not passive, but I've always been someone who I wasn't like, okay, even though our conversation tracks back a passion about film from a very young age, I wasn't like, I'm going to be a director or I'm going to be
right. Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not one of those people who like looked up in the sky one day and saw a plane and was like, I'm going to be a pilot. You know,
things kind of began falling into place with you.
And like followed a passion because I was genuinely interested in it and it led somewhere. But I'm not a big, like, this is my 5-year plan kind of guy. But I think from a producing standpoint, if you're in college, it sounds stupid, but it's like watch a lot of movies. It's a huge advantage. Watch a lot of movies, read a lot of books, read a lot of scripts. Practically, reading scripts is super helpful from a just skill standpoint. But you know, you're dealing with creative people, and it should be genuine and sincere, and be driven by the fact that you're actually interested in it. But it's also really helpful from a career standpoint of having those conversations with people where you can connect on a film that you both love, or some sort of literary basis for an idea or a story that you can connect on. And I think the more you think about the world in terms of storytelling and looking at through that, visual lens, the better equipped you'll be someday. And then as far as just getting into the industry and the field, I think there are a couple different ways to do it. There's no right way, but I think a lesson from my path is just like, get your foot in the door somewhere, work hard, be that person that everyone knows is hardworking and trustworthy.
You can get things done.
And, I think there's a sort of embrace of the hustle typically when people think about Hollywood and this industry, but I think people often just really want to be around and working with people who they know they can trust and have good taste and good ethics and can hustle, but don't do it at the expense of being reliable and in it for the right reasons.
Is there a really cool medium? You mentioned about reading books and reading. Is there something on the web that you tend to go to a lot that gives you access to a lot of different stories that you've enjoyed? And anyone that's a huge fan of storytelling, they should give it a shot to go and check it out?
My answer to this would have been a no-brainer like a few months ago. I had to check because last time I looked at this website hadn't been updated for a while. And I don't know if there's a reason for that, but longform.org is an incredible resource for just amazing stories. It's like long form journalism. And they have curated a fantastic series of articles that get updated, or we're getting updated every day from all sorts of publications that, from my perspective, are just great from reading great pieces of writing, but also a great resource for part of my job, which is trying to find stories to option to then adapt into features or TV series. And that is a great one.